Hands where I can see them. The shout came out of nowhere, loud and sharp like a gunshot. David froze, his hands still hovering near the door handle of his own car. He blinked in confusion, not even sure who the command was meant for, until he turned around and found two police officers standing behind him. The taller one, with a cold smirk and mirrored shades, took a step closer. "You're under arrest for attempting Grand Theft Auto." Just moments earlier, David had been walking up to his car, ready to head out. But when he tried unlocking it, the door wouldn't budge. He frowned, jiggled the key again, but nothing. Maybe he'd grabbed the wrong one or misplaced it. That's when the two officers, watching from their squad car nearby, suddenly rushed over, assuming the worst. "What?" David blinked. "This is my car." But the cop already had him by the wrist. "Sure it is," he scoffed, yanking David's arm behind his back. "Just so happens you were dumb enough to try stealing it in front of two officers." The second officer, younger, clean-shaven, and clearly uneasy, watched silently. David tried to plead, his voice calm but urgent. "Officer, just check the center console. My wallet and license are in there." "Oh, I'm sure they are," the older cop sneered, sarcasm dripping from his voice. He turned to his partner and muttered loud enough for David to hear, "You believe the stones on this guy? Thinks he can lie right to our faces. Sir, please, just look inside. I'm telling you the truth. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say or do can and will be used against you in a court of law," the older cop snapped, tightening the cuffs. "You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one, one will be provided to you." Have you ever watched something completely unfair unfold and felt powerless to stop it? Before we get too deep, what country or city are you tuning in from? Drop it in the comments. We love seeing where you're watching from. And if you believe that everyone deserves fair treatment, no matter their skin color, hit that like button and subscribe to Story Arc for more real stories that matter. Back at the scene, the younger officer finally spoke. "Shouldn't we at least check the car?" The older cop waved him off. "Maybe you should keep your mouth shut and open the door for me so I can process this scumbag." David was pushed into the back of the patrol car, his voice muffled behind the closing door. "Just check the car." "Save it for the judge," the older cop said coldly. Only one person seemed to wrestle with doubt, and that tiny hesitation was about to become everything. Back in the car, David sat cuffed and stiff, trying to stay calm even as his mind raced. He leaned forward. "Officer, please, just check the car. Everything you need is in the center console." The younger cop hesitated. "You really saying this is your car?" "I swear," David said. "My license, registration, it's all in there. Just give it a look." But before the officer could say anything, the older cop barked, "Don't waste your time. He's lying, and you're falling for it." The younger cop pushed. "Still, what if he's telling the truth?" "You know his kind," the older one snapped. "All they do is lie and steal." There was a pause. The younger officer's jaw tightened. "His kind?" he repeated. "That's completely inappropriate." But the senior officer wasn't backing down. "Let it go, Edwards. I'm your commanding officer, and this is my call." David watched in disbelief as the argument played out in front of him. "Please," he begged. "It'll take 10 seconds. Just check." But the older officer turned his back and slammed the car door shut. At the station, David was booked and thrown into a cell. "You're making a big mistake," he said again. "Check the car. Every answer you need is in there." The older cop just scoffed and walked off. But Officer Edwards wasn't finished. He stepped over quietly and crouched by the cell. "If you're really the owner, where exactly is your ID?" "In the center console," David said again. "Please." Edwards looked at him hard, searching for any sign of a lie. Then he stood. "All right. Sit tight. I'll be back." David blinked, caught off guard. "Why are you helping me?" Edwards replied, "Because I believe in fairness. Doesn't matter what you look like. If you're telling the truth, you deserve a chance to prove it. Have you ever had to risk your own reputation just to do what's right? If you're someone who believes that justice should come before rank, race, or pressure, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Story Arc for powerful stories that challenge the status quo. Officer Edwards walked straight into the common area and found the senior officer pouring himself a coffee like nothing just happened. "Sergeant," Edwards began cautiously, "I've been thinking maybe we should at least check out the guy's story." That's the least we can do before we end up wrongfully imprisoning someone who might be innocent. The older cop didn't even blink. Drop this nonsense, Edwards. Can't you see this guy is playing you for a sucker? Besides, I already called impound. They're sending a tow. Edwards folded his arms. Even if he is lying, we might find something in the car that could help our case. Just let me check it before they haul it away. That's when the sergeant's smile disappeared. His voice dropped. Don't even think about it. Edwards raised an eyebrow. Sir, if you go behind my back, I swear I'll make your life in this department a living hell. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a knife. Edwards stared at him, then gave the smallest nod. All right, I'll drop it. But as he walked away, his jaw tightened. He wasn't letting it go. Not by a long shot. Moments later, he stepped outside and pulled out his phone. He knew exactly who to call. Detective Ramirez, an old friend from the department who owed him a favor. Hey, I need your help, Edwards said. Can you meet me at the impound lot? I need to get into a vehicle. Quietly. Ramirez hesitated. Does this have anything to do with your sergeant? I'll explain when you get there. Sometimes doing the right thing means going against orders. But what would you do if your boss told you to walk away from justice? If you've ever had to make a hard call between your job and your values, hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe to Story Arc for more stories that remind us why integrity still matters. Later that evening, Ramirez showed up and used his tools to unlock the impounded vehicle. Edwards slid into the driver's seat and opened the center console. Empty. He checked the glove box. Nothing. No ID. No license. He sat there stunned. Had David lied to him after all? Edwards sat frozen in the driver's seat of David's car. Empty. He searched again. Center console, glove box, under the seat. Nothing. Not even a scrap of paper. The man had seemed so certain. So calm. But now, Ramirez stood nearby. You sure this is the right car? Yeah, Edwards said slowly, still looking around. This doesn't make sense. He stepped out of the car, running his hands over his head in frustration. And that's when he heard the voice. Well, look what we have here. Edwards turned, and there stood the sergeant, arms folded, that smug smirk back on his face. You have any idea how bad this looks? The sergeant snapped. Going behind my back, getting a detective involved. You'll be lucky if this doesn't cost you your badge. Edwards stood his ground. Sorry, Sergeant, I had to be sure. Oh? And did you find a license? Registration? A shred of proof? Edwards glanced back at the empty console and shook his head. No. Turns out, you were right. The sergeant clapped him on the shoulder. Of course I was. Now get in the car before I really lose my temper. As they drove back to the station, Edwards stared out the window, jaw clenched. Something still felt off. Back inside, he walked down to the holding cells where David sat on the bench, hands still cuffed in front of him. David looked up, hopeful. You found my license? Can I get out now? Edwards hesitated. I searched the whole car, man. There was nothing there. David frowned. That doesn't make sense. I left it right there. Center console. I swear. Edwards stepped closer, voice tight. You know the trouble I'm in for listening to you? I can't believe I fell for this. Listen, David said, eyes locked on his. Something's not right. I put it there. I'm not lying. But Edwards shook his head. I trusted you, and you lied. I can't do anything more. Have you ever stood up for someone only to feel like a fool afterward? Hit that like button if you've ever had your faith tested. And don't forget to subscribe to Story Arc for more stories that dig deeper than appearances. Edwards walked away. But the story wasn't over, not even close. The next morning, the squad room was packed. Officers filled every seat, sipping coffee, whispering in low tones as the police chief stepped up to the front. Morning, he began. Before we get into the day's agenda, I want to highlight an incident from yesterday. He paused, scanning the room. Sergeant Briggs, he said, motioning the senior officer forward. Briggs rose from his seat proudly and strutted to the front, adjusting his belt like he'd just won a trophy. Sergeant, the chief asked, tell us about that arrest you made yesterday. Briggs grinned. Caught a would-be car thief in the act, sir. Had him processed and booked within the hour. Good, the chief nodded. That makes this next part much easier. He turned. Officer Edwards, front and center. Edwards stiffened, stood up, and walked forward, unsure of what was coming. Is it true, the chief asked, that you disobeyed a direct order from your commanding officer and searched the suspect's vehicle? Edwards took a breath. Yes, sir. I did. I just wanted to be sure. I take full responsibility. Interesting, the chief said, pacing slowly, because I'm glad you did. The room went still. I rigged that car with hidden cameras, the chief continued. We've been getting complaints, claims of racial profiling. I didn't want to believe it, so I devised a test. A test? Edwards asked, eyebrows furrowed. The chief turned and the door opened. David walked in. No cuffs, no prison clothes. He was in a sharp suit, cleaned up and composed, with a badge clipped to his belt. The room went dead silent. This is Detective David from another station. He volunteered to help by pretending to be locked out of his car in order to see the reactions of my officers. The junior cop, still confused, looked at the chief. But I searched the car. I didn't see any evidence. No ID, no license. That's when the chief pulled out his tablet and played the footage. A clear video showed Briggs at the car, reaching into the console and pulling out the ID and wallet. Tampering with evidence. Clear as day. Briggs stumbled back. I can explain. You can explain it to the judge, David cut in, stepping forward. You're under arrest for tampering with evidence and obstruction of justice. You have the right to remain silent. He cuffed Briggs in front of everyone. Have you ever seen justice hit like a freight train? Then go ahead and like this video and subscribe to Story Arc for stories where truth always finds the light. The chief turned back to Edwards. You risked your job to do the right thing. That takes guts. He smiled. Looks like we have an opening for a sergeant. What do you say? Edwards blinked, stunned, then nodded. I'd be honored, sir. Justice had spoken.